I'll never forget the look on Sarah's face when I handed her my husband's suitcases right in front of her bewildered husband. That single moment of absolute shock, her perfectly mascara-lined eyes widening, her manicured hand flying to cover her mouth, was worth every second of the pain I'd endured. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Emma Mitchell, 42 years old, marketing executive, and until 3 weeks ago, what I thought was one half of a rock-solid 15-year marriage. My husband Daniel and I moved to Oakwood Terrace 2 years ago, a quiet suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and homes just far enough apart to give the illusion of privacy. The kind of place where people wave at each other while collecting mail but don't necessarily know what's happening behind closed doors. Sarah and Mark Henderson lived directly across from us. They were the picture-perfect couple. She always impeccably dressed with not a blonde hair out of place. He successful in real estate with that practiced charm that sold houses. They welcomed us to the neighborhood with a bottle of wine and homemade cookies that I later learned Sarah had purchased from the bakery downtown. That should have been my first clue about her authenticity. "You caught me at just the right time," I said to Daniel that fateful Thursday morning, my voice hollow as I stood in our bedroom doorway. The sheets were still rumpled from where I'd been sleeping alone. He froze, one hand still pulling a sock on, like a deer caught in headlights. "What are you talking about?" he asked. But his eyes, those eyes I'd trusted for 15 years, wouldn't meet mine. In my hand, I held his phone. He'd left it on the kitchen counter while showering, and when it buzzed repeatedly with incoming texts, I did something I'd never done before. I looked, and what I saw shattered the foundation of everything I believed about my life. "You really should be more careful with your passcode," I said quietly, scrolling through months of exchanges between my husband and Sarah Henderson. Explicit messages, plans for their meetups, inside jokes about getting together while Mark was on business trips and I worked late. "Emma, I can explain," he started, but I cut him off. "Explain what, exactly? How you've been sleeping with our neighbor for the past 8 months? How you told her our marriage was on its last legs, while you whispered, 'I love you' to me every night? Please, Daniel, explain away." The air in the room felt thick, unbreathable. Outside, through our bedroom window, I could see Sarah watering plants on her front porch, completely unaware that her carefully constructed secret was crumbling. "It's not what you think," Daniel said, using that soothing voice he always employed when trying to talk me down from being upset. I used to find it comforting. Now it made my skin crawl. "Really? Because I think you've been fucking our neighbor whenever I'm not around." The vulgarity felt foreign on my tongue, but somehow necessary. "I think you've been lying to my face for months while planning little rendezvous with a woman who waves to me every morning." Something shifted in me that morning. The initial shock had given way to a strange, eerie calm. I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body, observing this scene unfold like a spectator. "I was going to end it," he said, his voice cracking. It didn't mean anything." I laughed then, a harsh sound that surprised even me. "That's worse, Daniel. That means you risked everything we built together for something that didn't mean anything." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't." I watched him struggle, searching for the right words that could possibly undo what had been done. There weren't any. "Does Mark know?" I asked. Daniel paled. "Of course not. Emma, please, let's just talk about this. Just us. We can work through this." I stared at the stranger standing in front of me. The man who'd held my hand through my father's funeral. The man who'd once driven 12 hours straight when I got stranded during a business trip. The man who apparently could lead a double life without a flicker of remorse until caught. "You know what's fascinating?" I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I kept thinking something was off these past few months. I actually started therapy because I thought it was me, that I was being paranoid or too needy." I swallowed hard. I blamed myself for the distance between us. Outside, Sarah finished watering her plants and went back inside her house, the house where my husband had been a frequent visitor, apparently. "I'm going to work," I said finally. "And when I get home, I expect you to be gone." "Emma, this is my house too," he protested, finally finding his backbone. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You're right. It is. So I'll make this simple. You have 2 choices. Leave temporarily while we figure this out, or I call Mark Henderson right now and blow your comfortable little arrangement to pieces." The color drained from his face. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said, surprised by my own steely resolve. "You've clearly underestimated me for months. Don't make that mistake again." As I walked out of the room, heading to work as if it were any normal day, something crystallized inside me. This wouldn't end with Daniel simply moving out. That would be too easy, too clean. No, this betrayal, this humiliation right under my own nose, deserved something far more fitting. I wasn't just going to end my marriage. I was going to expose their affair in a way neither of them would ever forget. That day at work passed in a blur. I sat through meetings, answered emails, and smiled at colleagues while my mind raced through the last 8 months, recalibrating every memory with this new, terrible knowledge. The night Daniel said he needed to work late and came home smelling faintly of a perfume I didn't own. The weekend I went to visit my sister, and he claimed to have a guy's fishing trip that mysteriously produced no fish and no photos. The times Sarah would make oddly familiar comments about things in my life Daniel must have shared with her. All the signs had been there, waving like red flags in a hurricane, but I'd trusted him so completely that I'd rationalized each one away. When I got home that evening, Daniel was sitting at our kitchen table, his face ashen. "I canceled my dinner meeting," he said, as if that showed some grand commitment. "We need to talk about this." I set my purse down carefully. "Is that what you told Sarah? That you needed to cancel your plans because your wife found out?" He flinched. "I haven't spoken to her." "Liar," I said calmly, taking out my phone. I'd installed a call monitoring app during my lunch break. Something I never thought I'd do, but desperate times and all that. "You called her at 2:17 this afternoon. You talked for 6 minutes and 23 seconds. The shock on his face was almost satisfying. "How did you—" "Does it matter?" I interrupted. "What matters is you're still lying to me, even now." I sat down across from him. "I have one question, and I want the truth." "Why her? Of all people, why our neighbor?" Daniel's eyes fixed on the table. "It wasn't planned. It just happened." "Things don't just happen, Daniel. You made choices. Every single time." "She was there," he said softly. "When you were working late, when you were stressed about your promotion, she was just there." The casual cruelty of those words hit me like a physical blow. I had been working late to build a career that supported us both. The stress of my promotion had been partly because I wanted to contribute more to our future. "So this is my fault?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Because I was building a career while you were, what, feeling neglected?" "That's not what I meant," he backpedaled. "I'm trying to explain, not excuse." I stood up abruptly. "Pack your things. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here tonight." "Emma, please. 15 years. Don't throw that away." His voice broke. "I made a terrible mistake. I'll do anything to fix this." For a split second, I faltered. 15 years was a long time. We'd built a life together. We'd talked about children, though that had never happened. We had history, intertwined families, joint bank accounts. Untangling all of that would be excruciating. But then I remembered the messages I'd read, the casual way they'd discussed their meetups, the laughing emojis Sarah had sent when Daniel told her I was working late again. "Did you know," I said slowly, "that I turned down a promotion in Chicago last year because you said you couldn't bear to leave this house? This neighborhood?" The realization dawned as I spoke. "Was that because of her? Did you manipulate my career to stay close to your mistress?" His silence was answer enough. "Get out," I whispered. When he didn't move, I felt something snap inside me. "Get out!" I screamed, loud enough that I was sure the neighbors could hear, including Sarah. He scrambled to his feet, backing away from me like I was dangerous. Perhaps in that moment, I was. "I'll get some things," he said quickly. "We'll talk tomorrow when we're both calmer." I watched him hurry upstairs, and a strange sense of clarity washed over me. In 15 years of marriage, I'd never yelled at him like that. I'd always been the reasonable one, the peacemaker, the one who compromised. Not anymore. While Daniel packed upstairs, I walked to our front window and stared across the street at the Hendersons' house. The lights were on, and I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. Was Sarah panicking right now? Had Daniel warned her that I knew? My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Olivia. "Everything okay? You seemed off on our call earlier." I hadn't told anyone yet. Saying it out loud would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. But as I watched Daniel descend the stairs with a hastily packed duffel bag, I knew I needed an ally. "Daniel's been cheating with our neighbor. Can you come over tomorrow?" Her response was immediate. "On my way now. Don't do anything I wouldn't do until I get there." That made me smile, however briefly. The list of things Olivia wouldn't do was remarkably short. "I'll be at the Marriott downtown," Daniel said, standing awkwardly by the door. "Please call me tomorrow. We can work through this." I said nothing, just watched as he walked out of our home and drove away. Not to the Marriott, I was certain. Probably straight to Sarah's waiting arms the moment Mark left on his business trip tomorrow. The thought made my blood boil. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, cataloging every lie, every betrayal. By morning, my sadness had crystallized into something harder, colder. I knew exactly what I needed to do. When Olivia arrived, her fierce hug nearly broke me. "Tell me everything," she demanded. So I did. Every sordid detail, every realization, every plan forming in my mind. "You're sure about this?" she asked when I finished. "It's extreme. So is screwing the neighbor for 8 months," I replied. "They humiliated me in my own home, in my own neighborhood. I'm just returning the favor." Olivia studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay then, let's get to work." What Daniel never understood about me, what he clearly underestimated, was my capacity for strategic thinking. You don't become a marketing executive without knowing how to plan several steps ahead. "First things first," I told Olivia as we sat at my kitchen table that morning. "I need to confirm Mark's schedule." "How are you going to do that without tipping off Sarah?" she asked. I smiled thinly. "Because Mark and I have something in common. We both work too much. He posts his real estate open houses on the community Facebook page every week." Sure enough, a quick check confirmed Mark had open houses scheduled all day Saturday. Tomorrow. Perfect timing. "Now we need to get Daniel's things," I said. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "All of them?" "No, just enough to make a statement." We spent the morning selecting items from Daniel's closet, his favorite suits, the expensive watch I'd given him for our 10th anniversary, the monogrammed shirts his mother sent every Christmas. I packed them methodically in our largest suitcases, adding his toiletries, medications, and the framed photo of us from his nightstand. "What about this?" Olivia held up his passport. I considered it for a moment. "Add it. He'll need it when he's living somewhere else." By noon, we had 3 large suitcases packed. I sent Daniel a text. "I've packed some essentials for you. You can get the rest later." His reply came quickly. "Thank you. Can we talk today?" I didn't respond. Instead, I called my lawyer, a shark of a woman who'd handled my company's contracts for years. She agreed to meet me that afternoon. "You're not wasting any time," Olivia observed as I grabbed my keys. "Why would I?" They didn't. While Olivia stayed at the house, I met with my lawyer, Regina, and laid out everything. She took detailed notes, her expression growing progressively darker. "Digital evidence?" she asked. "I have screenshots of everything," I confirmed, "and the phone records showing their calls." Regina nodded approvingly. "Good. What else do you need from me today?" "A preliminary separation agreement. And I want our accounts frozen." She studied me carefully. "You're sure you don't want to attempt counseling first? The courts look more favorably." "I'm not interested in what looks favorable," I cut in. "I'm interested in what's fair. He betrayed me in our home with our neighbor for 8 months. He manipulated my career choices to facilitate his affair. I want him to feel this." Regina's stern expression softened slightly. "I understand. I'll have the paperwork ready by this evening." Back at home, Olivia had been busy. "I did some digging," she announced. "Sarah's been quite the social media butterfly. Look." She showed me Sarah's Instagram account, set to private, but Olivia had found a way in through a mutual acquaintance. There were dozens of photos from the past year that took on new meaning now. Sarah at a restaurant Daniel had claimed to have never visited. Sarah wearing a bracelet identical to one Daniel had claimed he'd bought for his mother. Sarah on a weekend trip to the coast during a time Daniel had said he was at a conference. She's been flaunting it, I said, feeling sick, right under everyone's noses. Not just that, Olivia added grimly. I think they've been using your house. What? She pointed to a photo of Sarah holding a wine glass. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable to me, was the unique tile backsplash from my kitchen. The realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. They hadn't just been sleeping together. They'd been bringing their affair into my home when I was gone. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. Change of plans, I said quietly. We're not just packing his essentials. We're delivering them. Tomorrow. That night, I barely slept again. But this time it wasn't grief keeping me awake. It was anticipation. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. From my bedroom window, I watched Mark Henderson leave for his open houses, dressed in his real estate finest. An hour later, Daniel texted again. Can we meet for coffee to talk? I'm busy today. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. I could almost feel his frustration through the phone. Good. You sure about this? Olivia asked as we loaded the suitcases into my car. Absolutely. What Daniel also didn't know was that while he'd been sneaking around with Sarah, I'd been making friends in the neighborhood on my own, including Eleanor Winters, the retired teacher who lived next door to the Hendersons and who happened to mention, during one of our morning walks, that Sarah received frequent male visitors when Mark was away. Such a shame, Eleanor had said. Mark is such a nice man. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Now I realized Eleanor had been trying to tell me something. I'd texted Eleanor that morning. Is Sarah home alone today? Her response came quickly. Yes, dear. Mark left for work. She's been home all morning. Everything all right? Everything's perfect. Would you mind texting me if she leaves? Of course. Olivia and I waited until afternoon. No texts from Eleanor meant Sarah was still home. No more texts from Daniel either. He'd probably given up for the day. Ready? Olivia asked as we pulled up across the street from the Hendersons' house. I took a deep breath. Ready? We unloaded the suitcases and rolled them up to the Hendersons' front door. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my hands were steady as I rang the doorbell. The wait seemed eternal. Then the door swung open. Sarah Henderson stood there, her perfect smile faltering as she took in the sight of me, Olivia, and 3 large suitcases on her doorstep. Emma, she said, confusion evident in her voice. Is everything okay? I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Everything's wonderful, Sarah. I've brought Daniel's things. Since he's spending so much time here, I thought he might need them. The color drained from Sarah's face so quickly I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for water. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, one hand clutching the doorframe for support. I tilted my head slightly. No? That's strange, because according to the texts on his phone, you two have been quite intimate for months now. I pushed the largest suitcase forward with my foot. His clothes, his toiletries. Oh, and this one. I patted the medium-sized case. Has those monogrammed shirts you complimented him on. The ones his mother gave him. Her eyes widened at that specific detail, a confirmation if I ever needed one. Emma, please, she whispered, glancing frantically over her shoulder into the house. This isn't what you think. Oh? What do I think, Sarah? That you've been sleeping with my husband in my bed when I'm not home? That you've been laughing behind my back at neighborhood barbecues? What's going on here? A deep voice interrupted my tirade. Mark Henderson appeared behind his wife, looking between us with growing concern. He was supposed to be at his open houses. The carefully constructed plan in my head began to crumble. Sarah's face went from white to green. Mark, you're home early. Open house canceled. The sellers had a family emergency. His eyes fell on the suitcases, then back to me. Emma, what's this about? For a split second, I faltered. This wasn't how I'd planned it. Mark was supposed to be gone, and Sarah was supposed to be alone when faced with the evidence of her betrayal. But something in Mark's confused expression, the same trusting bewilderment I'd felt just days ago, steeled my resolve. "Your wife has been having an affair with my husband for the past 8 months," I said clearly. "I found out on Thursday. I've brought his things here since this seems to be where he spends most of his time when you're working." The silence that followed was deafening. Mark's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something darker as he processed my words. "That's ridiculous," Sarah finally sputtered. "Mark, she's clearly having some kind of breakdown." "Is she?" Mark cut in, his voice dangerously quiet. He turned to me. "You have proof of this?" I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots I'd taken, and handed it to him without a word. Sarah lunged for it, but Olivia smoothly stepped between them. "Don't," my sister warned. Mark scrolled through the messages, his face hardening with each swipe, the explicit texts, the planning, the inside jokes at both our expenses. When he looked up, his eyes were cold. "How long?" he asked his wife. "Mark, please, I can explain." "How long?" he roared, making all of us flinch. Sarah began to cry, mascara tracking down her cheeks. It just happened, Mark. It didn't mean anything." I laughed bitterly. "Funny. That's exactly what Daniel said." As if summoned by his name, a car screeched to a halt at the curb. Daniel jumped out, panic written across his face as he took in the scene on the Hendersons' doorstep. "Emma, what are you doing?" he called, rushing toward us. Mark handed me back my phone and turned to face my husband. "I think your wife is delivering your belongings to their new home," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Since you've been so comfortable in mine." Daniel stopped in his tracks, looking from Mark to Sarah to me. "Mark, listen, this isn't— If you say this isn't what it looks like, I might actually punch you," Mark interrupted. "Because it looks exactly like you've been fucking my wife behind my back. Behind Emma's back." He pointed to the suitcases. "Take your shit and get off my property." Daniel's face crumpled. "Sarah, tell him what?" I asked, finding my voice again. "That you've been planning weekend getaways together? That you've been in our bed when I'm not home? That you—" My voice broke slightly. "That you told her our marriage was failing while telling me everything was fine?" A small crowd had begun to gather on the sidewalk. Neighbors pretending to walk dogs or check mail, all watching the drama unfold, including Eleanor Winters, who gave me a small, sad nod of acknowledgement. "Everyone is watching," Sarah hissed, trying to pull Mark back inside. "We need to talk about this privately." "No," Mark said firmly, shaking off her hand. "I'm done with privacy and secrets." He turned to me. "Did you know about this before Thursday?" I shook my head. "I had no idea. I found their messages on his phone." Mark nodded, a look of grim understanding passing between us. "Fellow members of a club no one wants to join." "Daniel," I said, turning to my shell-shocked husband. "I've frozen our accounts. I've filed separation papers. My lawyer will contact you on Monday." I gestured to the suitcases. "You should take these. I assume you'll need somewhere to stay, now that both your beds are unavailable to you." Daniel stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Perhaps he hadn't. Not really. Not this version of me that refused to be a silent, accommodating victim. "You can't do this," he said weakly. "I already have." Mark stepped forward, picked up the largest suitcase, and shoved it hard into Daniel's chest. "Take your things and leave. Now." The neighborhood watched in stunned silence as Daniel loaded his suitcases into his car. Sarah had retreated inside the house, sobbing audibly. As Daniel drove away, Mark turned to me. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "Me too." "Coffee sometime?" he asked, surprising me. "I think we might have a lot to talk about." Despite everything, I found myself nodding. "I'd like that." As Olivia and I walked back to my car, the weight that had been crushing my chest since Thursday felt lighter. Not gone. The pain would linger for a long time, but transformed into something I could carry. "You okay?" Olivia asked, squeezing my hand. I looked back at the Hendersons' house where Mark stood alone on the porch, looking as shell-shocked as I'd felt days earlier. "No," I answered honestly, "but I think I will be." 6 months passed. Seasons changed. Wounds began to heal. The divorce was finalized faster than I expected. Daniel didn't fight it. Couldn't, really, with the evidence stacked against him. I kept the house. He kept his guilt. Sarah and Mark Henderson put their house on the market 3 weeks after that day on their doorstep. I heard they separated too, though Mark stayed in town while Sarah moved back to her parents' place in Michigan. The neighborhood gossip eventually found new targets, though Eleanor Winters still brings me cookies occasionally, telling me how proud she is of my moxie. Daniel tried to contact me several times in those first few months. Apology texts, emails explaining how he'd found himself through therapy. Once, flowers delivered to my office with a card begging for coffee, just to talk. I donated the flowers to a nearby nursing home and never responded to any of his outreach. Some wounds don't need closure. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. What surprised me most was my friendship with Mark. That offered coffee turned into weekly walks, then occasional dinners. Two broken people finding comfort in the one person who truly understood their specific pain. "Do you think they were worth it?" Mark asked one evening as we sat on my back porch, watching fireflies dance in the summer dusk. To each other, I mean. Was their affair worth losing all of this? I considered the question carefully. "I don't think it was ever about worth," I finally replied. "It was about convenience, opportunity, selfishness." He nodded slowly. "I keep wondering if I missed signs, if I should have known." "Me too," I admitted. "But I've realized something. Their choices weren't a reflection of what we lacked. They were a reflection of what they lacked. Integrity, courage, honor." Mark's hand found mine in the growing darkness. A gesture of understanding, not romance. Not yet. We were both still healing, still learning to trust again. "I'm selling real estate in Colorado next month," he said after a comfortable silence. "A week-long trip. Beautiful mountains, clean air. You should come." I turned to look at him, surprised. "As your friend," he said quickly. "Separate rooms. I think we both could use some perspective. Some distance from this place and its memories." I squeezed his hand gently. "I'd like that." Later that night, after Mark had gone home, I stood in my bedroom, the room I'd once shared with Daniel, and realized I'd gone a whole day without thinking of my ex-husband, without feeling that sharp stab of betrayal, without wondering what I could have done differently. Progress comes in small moments. Healing happens in quiet spaces between heartbeats. I picked up my phone and texted Olivia. "I think I'm going to Colorado next month." Her response came immediately. "With neighbor guy?" "Yes. As friends. For now." I smiled at her teasing, then walked to the window that overlooked what used to be the Hendersons' house. New owners had moved in last month, a young couple with a toddler and another baby on the way. I'd welcomed them with wine and store-bought cookies, making no claims about baking them myself. The truth, I've learned, is always simpler than lies. I don't know what the future holds with Mark, or with my career, or with this house full of complicated memories, but I know this. I survived the worst betrayal I could imagine, and I emerged stronger. Not unscathed, but unbroken. Sometimes when life hands you heartbreak, you don't just survive it, you use it to build something new, something honest, something real. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't in the moment of exposure, but in the quiet dignity of rebuilding your life without those who tried to destroy it. I closed the curtains on my old view and turned toward whatever comes next.